Regions Bank. So council, thank you guys for the unexpected field trip, and thanks to everybody else who tagged along to take a look at that building. Councilman Richardson and I had a chance to do a tour on Friday. And thought that it would be a good idea to have everybody take a look at that building since it is a city-owned facility. And as we talk about Vision 2030 and everybody wanting to know options and city-owned facilities, that it would be a really good idea for us to all take a look and not say, go take a look sometime. And so group effort, we're just gonna go rip the Band-Aid off and do it. So now that we've seen it, I'll just open it up to everybody for Vision 2030 discussion topics.
Well, first of all, do we know numbers for completing the repairs needed over there to make that building
You
functional?
know, like I said, unless Jason might have some, but JT had said that it'd be at least 180,000 to put in the offices and refinish the ceilings and.
We did get, echo what Jackie's saying, we did get a couple of bids for like even just lighting and some electrical. And I think they were in the like around 50 just for those parts, so.
But that was only for the Optimate portion, is that correct?
Correct, only for the
Right.
Optimate
Right.
portion.
So I guess I'll kind of go and say, as we look at our facility needs and our ability to execute on certain things, going through that building with Steve and Jackie, I look at that building and I go, there's a lot of space. We've already invested some money into it with a roof and new boilers. In order to do these offices, it was in the original plan, you're looking at more investment. Can this be a permanent home for City Hall and for police? And then could you keep fire where they are? I think, obviously the money is a big thing. How much money do you have to dump into that? In terms of renovations, to see if it's feasible. But, if it's a long-term home, as we've talked about, elevator would be necessary. It's a significant investment. If you're gonna make a significant investment for an elevator, then that's something I think you go, this is a long-term home, not a, 10-year home. It's a long-term home. And I see a lot of potential and opportunities when we were over there. That's why I said keep an open mind. Walls can be moved in some cases. And I just think it's something that if I go through, I can envision where different things are. We've got multiple safes that are there that police can use for evidence and securely store evidence. We own the parking lots back there. I just think there's an endless amount of possibilities for what we could do to tackle the three main facility needs that we've talked about in priority. So I'm just gonna throw it out there and rip the Band-Aid off.
No matter what we do, I don't see tearing that down as being a viable option anymore now that I've seen the space firsthand. But no matter what we decide to utilize it for, it's too large of a space to just tear down. I just can't wrap my mind around that anymore.
We didn't even go over to through the back hallway to where the chamber and everything is too. So,
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think, I agree that it's something that solves immediate needs. Always as things change, city grows and those kinds of things, we need to keep in mind that it's permanent is fleeting in a sense, because our needs do change as time goes on. We've also talked, and I know Chief Chia talked when he was still here about the fact that we probably need some satellite offices in the future. But again, that's going to depend also on whether or not the state allows us to do certain, and voters allow us to do some kind of projects with with an EMS and fire district or regional district, but I think really what we need to look at, and there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and I've said all along that we have to figure out how much money we're gonna bond for and what we're gonna build. And what we take down and what we keep. Maybe we don't take anything down. Maybe we keep things here. Maybe we look at other things. I don't want to take anything off the table. I agree, Steve. I think it's got too much space to waste, and Christina both. I think it's got an opportunity for council chambers and administrative staff. I think there's opportunities for whether it's short term or 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. I don't know how long that would be, but I think the police department could find a way to make it work. I guess from my perspective, if we're gonna use the police department, we wouldn't probably want them all in the basement. We'd probably want them up above and give them the opportunity to have quick access out of the building in case they need to, and whatever case it is. And I think you're gonna probably have to put some kind of a structure for their vehicles underneath, at least an awning. You go to Arizona, for instance, and they've just got the sunshades over there. Maybe that could be used for the summer and winter as well, keep the snow off the vehicles at least, most generally. I don't know what you do. I mean, there's all kinds of options on the table, but, and I also want to just throw out, I don't think we have to keep First Street open. I think we can figure out ways to utilize additional space, whether it's parking space or some other kind of facility that stores their vehicles or fences them in or whatever the case is. But start getting into fencing in a certain area, and then you take away the parking, and that's always a big issue too. So I do think that it would serve well for council chambers over there. I think it would serve well for administrative staff. I think there's all kinds of opportunities. And I do agree that you're probably gonna want to keep, community development, some of those places that are gonna be accessible to people on a regular basis upstairs as well. But I think mostly generally that there could be office space down below. There's a storm shelter in there. There are safes that you could use. There's places that you could build things for PD for a period of time. And again, maybe 5 years down the road or 7 years or 10 years down the road, the needs are going to change. So I don't want to say it's going to be a completely permanent facility, but I do know when you start putting a lot of money in it, that the public's going to believe it's permanent. But you have to make the case down the road, and I probably won't be on the council by that time anyway. And so, the point being that would be a council decision as we move forward. But again, we can't tie future councils to decisions we make. And so I just think that it's got some real opportunities and real things for us, ways that we can maybe work within that budget we get with the revenue bond, if that's the way we choose to go. But I think that's pretty important. I know Jackie laid out some information for us on bidding timelines, and also the fact that, we're not going to have complete control of that facility. My understanding is the middle of April. Does anybody know for sure?
For what
So
one?
the regions portion of that building?
Yeah, I think it's April 11th.
Okay. So that does give us some time, but keep in mind, if you look at that, the typed sheet here about the bidding process, you'd have to have architectural come in and take a look at it and get us some numbers. And we're gonna have to put the bidding together, and it's gonna take architects a little while to do that. You gotta give them some time to figure it out. And then move forward with some of that stuff. And I think the other side of that is we've got some other needs too that, then you got this building. Are you gonna redo this building for fire? Are you going to add on to it for fire department? Or what are we gonna do? Because obviously they've got equipment stored in other locations that just can't be here. And so we're gonna have to do a little bit more work on this facility as well. And then the question becomes, do you really want to put it into this building? It's 12.5 million was what Ryan estimated, just bring this up to a place where we can basically make it work. It's not going to get too hot down here if they put offices down here like it does during our council meetings and other things like that. There's a whole range of things that we have to think about. And the other thing you got to remember is that we've got a series of things that we really need to deal with. We need to deal with public works if we're going to do the 6th Street sub-area plan. We've got people in the library that are already moving forward with some ideas and thoughts on those kinds of things. And we're got to be out of that building by 28 over there, the current library. And so we just can't stop at this project. It's got to be a project you start thinking on this project, and you also got to be thinking about the next project down the road and what is that next project and move forward and on down the road. You just can't say, oh, we're good now for a while and then not do anything. Those are my thoughts.
And I think the one thing we have to remember with this building too, in terms of space, is you keep fire here. It's just fire. Nobody else. PD's gone. City staff's gone. Wherever that other home is. You've already added space for offices. And I think the magic number we have to remember is 27 million. That's our bonding capacity for a geo bond. If you were to go to geo bond for anything. Unless you want to tap the card out at 100%, and then it's 41. So I think that's the important thing when we talk about this, and you know, the old plan is not a doable plan. We couldn't afford it. So I think we just have to keep in mind the number's 27 million if you do a geo bond. We don't know the revenue bond number officially, but we've got to start somewhere. And if we start and move forward with something, I think that's the big thing. We've got to move forward with something.
Keep in mind though, the fire's got a problem, and the problem is you got boats down in another facility down by Arby's. You've got a building across the street. And so it's not gonna be just this building alone. You've got to do something else for fire. It can't be
Yeah.
just this.
But you can't though until we actually move PD and ourselves out of here.
This is true. But
So you
again,
gotta start somewhere. So if we can start and go, where's City Hall and PD gonna go? Then we can then go, where's fire going?
Exactly. No, and that's what I was saying. You start one project and you have to be thinking about the next one. Almost immediately, you have to be thinking about that next one and planning for the future on that one too. I agree with you, Steve. We're
Yeah.
agreeing. We're just saying it differently. Yeah.
I just feel like we're hesitant on pulling the trigger on going, let's get an architect here to look at this building, right? I mean,
I'm fine with that.
if that's what we wanna do, we can.
Well, like I said, Main Street, we can work through Iowa Department of Economic Development. We can use their architectural services. The only question I would have on that is if it's gonna take longer because of that, rather than just having another architect involved one way, shape or form. And I think maybe that's something we have to find out, but I think we can still set some direction. I personally think we can set some direction tonight. I don't have a problem with that. Depends on what everybody is. That's my thinking.
Have we done any phase 2 testing out at the 6th Street sub area?
Great question.
Did phase one.
I know.
And
Have we
then-
done any phase 2?
I don't know if we have or not, but the phase one's only good for 180 days, so.
This one's expired.
And you gotta have a new phase one done before you do phase two. My understanding.
So, and phase 1 showed
I remember some contamination, but not a lot, but that wasn't a real in-depth program. It's not a real.
right, and phase 2 is what would show how in-depth that is.
Correct.
So my question is, we're doing a lot of discussion
Right.
about what we're doing with things and where buildings are gonna go.
Mhm.
And, we're discussing putting the library out there and then having housing and all these other things tie into that. But yet we haven't even done phase 2 testing. So that alone, we're ill prepared to make any decisions on that. We have to know those numbers. If we do not know what that reclamation cost is gonna be, how can we say we're gonna put the library there? I mean, if it's gonna be, some astronomical number, which it very well could be, based on some of the things I've been hearing,
What did phase one come back with? I'm sorry.
minimal to, was it minimal to light?
Yeah, I think they had to do what they were thinking that there would be more that we'd have to do, especially on the older buildings that are there. There's asbestos and stuff. They already did come back with that. There was asbestos buildings. There would have to be remediation on the asbestos.
So, I mean, if that number is gonna be so far out there that it's not even possible to do what we want to do with that whole area, do we then need to consider what could we put out there without putting housing as well? And do we potentially consider building the library in a different location that is still, you know, viable to the center of Indianola? Like,
Can I just pipe up about Sixth Street? And I don't mean to step in front of you, but like, we don't have to necessarily figure that out. We don't have to be the ones to develop Sixth Street sub area. Either we put out an RFP and have a developer develop that for us. And that's their money, their fee to do all that stuff. The library, the Friends of the Library voted last week, they're buying the corner property adjacent to Sixth Street sub area. So that family has made that property available and they're working on entering into agreement to buy that corner property that's directly next to the Sixth Street sub area to help supplement that and be a part of that whole thing out there. I think Sixth Street sub area is huge for us. I just don't know that we have to figure all of that out. You can put out an RFP and say, you know, this is our direction, this is our plan, this is what we want. And have a developer take all that risk and all that burden.
what developer is gonna wanna take on that reclamation? I mean,
It's all part
depending
of
on
that.
how bad it is.
And absolutely, some of that's on them, and I'm not saying it's clear, but it's part of the process. If a developer wants to take over, we can incentivize it properly and make it worth it, that they can be on the bike trail right next to a brand new library. There's a lot of benefit to that. I agree, there's still unknowns, but
So you said the Friends of the Library, they are buying that property right there on the corner?
the green piece.
So, I mean, potentially that ground is not contaminated, correct? So, I mean,
As much as any,
no matter what happened, I mean, a library could go there.
correct.
So we test.
Residential today.
It's a residential
Yeah, I don't-
home that's been there for over 100 years. That family's lived on it for 100 years. So,
I know nothing about soil and what fuel can do,
I
so.
mean, they wouldn't be buying it for the historical value of the home though, right? I
No.
mean, is to use for
I think the
library.
thought process is the library, like all the different departments and that, I don't want to get too far down just the one library rabbit hole, because I've got a whole list of buildings that we need to build, but you know, the Friends can help have something to fundraise. We've authorized engineering. There's an opportunity to do this. They can start to fundraise to help supplement this project. And at least, worst case scenario, at least buy the land to donate to the city when the project is fully authorized. Best case scenario, there's some other funds that can raise there to help offset it. But then it's the corner piece and really still the cornerstone of redeveloping this whole area for the city.
Well, I guess my thinking in that is because we're supposed to be looking at all the properties, so if they were to purchase that, then maybe we consider keeping a fuel facility out there, but also putting in a new fire PD.
It takes away from your.
Yeah.
From the overall, it does,
Tax
but
base, right? I mean, our goal was to develop it commercial, residential.
I guess I'm talking worst case scenario, sorry. If the reclamation costs come back that they're gonna be astronomical.
I think, and that's where I would like back up now that I've gone down the library tangent a little bit, is like the hard thing that we have here is, and I get it, there's so many concerns and risks that we're talking about everything that could go wrong instead of what we want to go right with this stuff. Like, we just worked really hard for all this Main Street Iowa designation, right? We want to put back door of a PD with a whole bunch of cars and a fence to be the entrance to the square. Maybe, I don't know, but like, are we thinking about that impacts and how it impacts what we worked so hard for? We've worked so hard to elevate the square for all the businesses there, to create shopping for everybody, right? Is that what we want? Do I think that I don't want to use the word temporary, a city hall for a certain amount of time would work really well at that building across the street? Yeah, I don't need to talk about it anymore. It sounds great. Let's do it. Do I think having PD and fire through here is what helps the square grow, elevate our tax base and encourage more businesses to come? Not really. That's my personal opinion, but my perspective is looking at everything from 10 and 20 years down the road how do we make it so that our tax basis is better here? So that when we have these budget issues, we're not quite as strapped as we are. When people want all these nice things, you know, Wade's talked about it, that slide that, Jackie had it too, that like, you know, relational to income, our tax revenue is astronomically lower, but people's expectations for service have not dropped from a city's perspective. And so, hey, how do we create more? You know, and on that front, we gotta do police, we gotta do fire, we gotta do public works, we gotta do library, we gotta do city hall, we gotta do the Sixth Street sub area. There's a lot to do. It's like I was telling you over there, like and I know it's tough because so many departments have been said, well, you're the priority. No, you're the priority. You know, everyone gets a car. But like, I don't care who goes first. I care that we all finish at the same time. We've spent years not doing new buildings in this town. We need to do new buildings. And I'm not trying to belittle all the negative discussion because Lord knows those thoughts roll through my head like crazy, but yeah, we do have to have a decision on some of it. But I think some of it has to be framed. I'm like, I don't know, what if we actually do it right? Like, what if we actually do all these projects right and actually create something really cool and beautiful for the city that actually adds services for citizens? And we have to be aware of the worst case scenarios. But like, we've lived in that famine mentality forever. And that's how we ended up with a courthouse that was falling apart, right? That's how we've ended up with this building that we all love coming to. You know, that's how we've ended up with a lot of this stuff. And I'm not saying it can't be logical and rational, but like, what if the answer isn't the worst case scenario? What if it is actually some intentionality? And if you actually have some hope that you share out with staff, maybe it isn't ideal to do it this way. But man, we see the bigger picture and let's get there together. I hear you on the fire department here. Yes, it solves the offices, but it doesn't solve the bay issue. We were just trying to build according to our fire department. You need 8 bays to cover this town. It was obnoxious in the other plan, right? Our fire study is telling us that we really need 2 4-bay facilities, one on the east side, one on the west side, or the north side and the west side, to properly cover our growing community, you know? And so like,
But the reality is, we do not have the staff too.
not
We-
yet.
We don't. And so we have to live within that reality. Yeah, you can plan for a satellite,
Yeah.
We
but.
don't have the
Yeah,
funds to build an 8-bay.
And I
I'm not saying
disagree,
do that.
and I disagree that we need to build all new buildings, because point blank, we can't afford it.
You don't know that. You just
Twenty,
don't know that.
27.7.
That's this year's number.
Okay, you wanna, the biggest number you get down to is 69.
I'm not saying.
Before we get too far down this road, I would like to finish my thought process here. So in discussing, you know, how we need to draw more attention to downtown and the Main Street project. It has always been, and I think if any of you had looked at the drawings that I sent you months and months ago, where I very blatantly said, this building should go. Absolutely should go, and it should either go to a developer, so we can add more business district to match what we have, or it needs to become some combination of a park and business. Something that draws people in from the highway. That has been something I've been saying from the get-go. I don't care where we put fire and police. I don't care where City Hall goes. But the numbers all have to work. And in order to get there, there can't be, I feel like there's so much push and shove that goes back and forth between everybody because everybody has their passion projects, right? And I'm just being very frank right now. Like, you know, some people are more for library, some people are more for PD. I can say it, I have been a strong advocate for PD and fire. That's just because that's where one of my passions lie. Doesn't mean they're any more important, you know. But in my opinion, I think they are because it's an essential service. So if we want to simply say, where do we put this building? Where do we put this? Where do we move here? And it's a giant game of chess, right? So if we're looking at the Sixth Street sub area, what is going to bring us more tax base? Putting a library out there and some housing, or putting a library, PD and fire out there, removing this element and bringing more business development to the downtown street area. To me, I think we should be looking at which one of those options is gonna bring us the most business, the most tax base. Before we say it's a done deal, you know, like, it's great. I'm happy to hear the library got that plot of land out there. That gives them a definite place to be. That's huge.
Gotta get to fundraising though.
Well,
I mean, That's what we were told on how it was getting built, was fundraising.
Well,
I get that, but
I
at the
mean,
same time,
The way we
like,
watched the video, fundraising.
our land swap deal tied us into deadlines. And I said from the get-go, again, there has to be some kind of plan to get there. And, you know, we've had 6 different plans at this point. And how are you supposed to keep all of those plans straight? How is staff supposed to keep any of that straight? We cannot seem to come up with one definition of what we want our direction to be. And I guess that's where my frustration lies, and I know I'm ranting it all out at this point, but at some point, something has to give. Some chess piece has to move first. And then the rest need to follow. So I guess, do we have a plan in place? Can we get some phase 2 testing done out there? Would council be okay with us starting phase 2 testing? So we at least have an answer on that?
I think we have to do phase 1 again, right?
Well, it's phase 1 and then phase 2.
Well, I don't disagree with, I'll let you go back to your thing here, but the phase 1, phase 2, I think Josh is probably somewhat right there, that the developer can do that. But if you think you really need it, I don't know what the cost of that is. The group that, we have somebody on planning and zoning that belongs to a group that does phase 1, phase 2 testing. It's the Denman Group. And not to say that that automatically gets them to do that, but I think they did I believe, did they do it? Jackie, would you know, did Denman Group do our original phase 1? Do you know?
I can look and see. I don't know.
We've been hearing all along from our developers that the city needs to do more to get them to develop here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we're already having that problem, let's not create a bigger problem here. Let's just get the testing done.
The challenge with that is that there's always timelines on it, and then we're having to make a decision on if we're committing to do that or if we're gonna bring that to somebody else. And I think if we have the plans of offsetting that development to somebody else, it's perfectly appropriate to do that within the scope of that RFP package. My concern, the only concern I have right now is that it would be much like the phase 1. We do something and then timelines and nothing happens, and then it's that tough balance because of timing. But
Some piece has to move forward. So I don't know, you know, like,
I think the piece that moves forward, Christina, is that, in my opinion, and you're right, and again, I've said all along, we need to figure out what we're doing with the money. And then where we're putting people if we're gonna get rid of this building, because I'm with you. I think frankly and honestly, to put $12.5 million into this building is probably not the best investment of our dollars, because you're taking a 1960s building with the 1990s addition that doesn't work today and trying to make that all work with anything additionally you may do to make sure you've got a fire station that's gonna be operable. So I really do think that we have to consider that we may temporarily house fire to here. You know, move PD out, move administration out. It doesn't mean that PD is gonna be left in behind, but the idea is that we're gonna get rid of this building. And if that's the first thing we're gonna do, we do the first 2 things to get everything going on that Regions building for temporary for the police department anyway. Council, it may be permanent. It may be permanent if that's what you want to say for staff.
Yeah, and that's council down the road, right?
Yeah,
I mean-
but the point, and so that gives you a start there. But then you've got to find either locations or you have to find the money, and that's another factor. I get that, to do that. And then in the meantime, so here's all your chess pieces. I had it broken out into 7 projects in 10 years, right? Frankly and honestly. You've got fire and PD, those are gonna be your first 2. You've got to have street department because you're gonna move them out because you're probably gonna use that portion of that lot for the library. We've already talked about moving street department out west. There's space out there to do that. And so in the meantime, then, as you're, and so you get those 2 things started, okay? We've moved police and fire, or police and administration and council. You keep fire here. You work on getting that building built out west so that it can temporarily somehow figure out a way to make that work for fire temporarily as you tear this building down and start building wherever you're gonna build a fire department. And so those chess pieces all have to work together, and they can do that. But then you're also forgetting that we've got 3 other buildings that we've acquired from the county that we're either gonna figure out to sell to Simpson, or we're gonna figure out to do something else with it, or sell it to individual developers. But again, those are all pieces of the puzzle that come later. That's the last portion, in my opinion. And so when you put together a plan like that, it makes some sense then. Oh, one other thing I forgot, we gotta move the joint fuel facility. And that's in coordination with the school district. My understanding is the county is gonna start using that out south. I don't know how they're not gonna still use this here, but if, whatever the case is, we're probably gonna have to find another facility for that. And we can talk with the school district about that. They do have ground out there by the current bus facility, but that's my idea. Nobody else has, I haven't talked to anybody about that. But I think, folks, it's a fairly simple process in the fact that we look at this timeline here and see where we are. We're not gonna get the building until April 11th, Jackie says. That you're now looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings, 4 council meetings that we've got to figure something out. I think frankly and honestly, that we really need to direct staff to get in touch with the Iowa Department of Economic Development to talk with that Main Street architect and see what the scope of what they can do provides us at that building. And once that process starts, then we can figure out what we can do and what we're gonna put over there. But I do think you've got to figure out the fact you're gonna move PD and administration and council over there. That's my thinking. Fire department here until we get a building built out west that can work for them. And then temporary, extremely temporary. And then we take this building and knock it down and figure out what we're doing here. Whether you sell the property, you bring in a developer, whatever the case is. I love your idea, Christina. I think it brings tax base to us, but I also don't think that we want to clutter up the 6th Street sub-area plan. Because I think if you look at go back and look at those plans provided, was it Confluence that provided those plans? I think if you look at that, there's so much more than just residential property there. There's retail and other things in that property too, huh?
MSA.
MSA, I'm sorry. Thank you. I apologize, MSA. There's retail there as well. And so it's more than just residential. And depending on the type of residential, it can be commercial development. Then you get more than 12 units, it's going to be commercial property. So, I mean, there's a lot of things there as you think through this. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this.
Jackie's got something.
I know you all have, yeah.
I just found an old email from last April that said that the county had done phase 2 testing, so I emailed Kim Sheets and asked her to provide that.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. Thank you,
What
Jackie.
you're talking about is having projects over a decade, right? So in 5 years, our bonding capacity is 42 million. In 10 years, our bonding capacity is 54 million, right? If with conservative estimates. I think the whole point of all this that I was trying to make earlier, funding, that let's take some smaller bites of this apple like continue to earn trust with staff, with the citizens, not do anything overly aggressive, and plan to do these projects as we go. You can still have a vision, it can still move. And we work through it as our bonding capacity increases. We pay off some as we go, that number gets bigger, we have more room, right? And pick. Again, I agree with you, we all have our preferred probably projects. Say it very clearly, I want all of these to finish. I think it is what everybody deserves, citizens and staff.
Absolutely.
And so I agree with you. I would love this to long-term have some tax basis value that supports the square, whether that's multifamily, commercial, whatever that can be. I don't know yet. But I'm with you, and I think the same could be said and should be said of North Sixth Street. Like, if you go back and look at that sub area, like, you know, and I make, say at a public meeting, I'll probably regret this later, but like, you go to Arilla, go to the Chicken, right? Like that restaurant. That needs to be on the Sixth Street sub area, on the bike trail in Indianola. We pull a ton of bikes. That should be there with a big courtyard. If you look at it, it's all laid out in that Sixth Street sub area. That opens up to more commercial with multifamily right to a beautiful civic building that happens to house a library with events. So to that point, yeah, I'm good. Like, whether it's temporary, permanent, like, I think it would be a disservice to PD if that was a permanent home.
I agree.
I agree.
But, so if the first step is figure out for sure City Hall and admin there, and if we can make it work, step one, to your point, take baby steps. You know, if we can find out more information about phase two on Sixth Street. I mean, I don't have a lot of familiarity with it from this seat, but there's a way to put out an RFP to work with developers and help do some stuff, take it over, right, Wade?
Yeah, that's right. You know,
Isn't that my friend Wade? He hasn't talked much tonight.
I led a much smaller project, but, you know, we remodeled the building and the dimensions of that building were finite. But once you decided that you're gonna move over there, whatever architect won the RFP came in and had, you know, an unbelievable amount of meeting with like the police and fire and say, what's the problem with your existing station? And I got that tour today. And what is it what are your needs? And they will start petitioning off the building and meeting those needs. And I can guarantee it doesn't have to be a brand new building from scratch. And that there's plenty of space over there to do it. And the architect will tell you what it's gonna cost to do it. Now, I mean, this is fairly high level stuff and we need it. And I don't know that IEDA, the stuff that I've used them for in the past is kind of like renderings. Maybe we applied for grants, but to actually come in and develop bid documents that you could then put on the street for a contractor to build what you think you need is, in my opinion, maybe asking a bit much for free services from IEDA, but
Okay.
I will find out if they can do that. But otherwise, I think the step is, you know, you hire that architect and you go in there and, the first thing they're gonna do is, I mean, there's some frustrations with our facilities and they're from both the police and fire staff. Conversations about how, it's not about pay. We're losing people because of our facilities. These are the things that a good architect will listen to and make sure that are incorporated into a new building. And, from what I've seen, I could show you before and after of it's hard to even wrap your mind around what it looked like before and after and how an existing building can meet your needs. And a lot of what I heard today was like, look at how small this office is. Our officers are tripping over each other. We can't get desks big enough to lay out evidence, do this and that. None of the problems I saw today could only be fixed by a brand new building somewhere else. So
I agree with you, Wade.
I think we need to break it down into component pieces and send out RFPs for the pieces that we think are the most, and if we can all agree that, okay, maybe across the street is where police and administration need to go, then get an architect over there and send out an RFP for the project.
Let me ask you this question. We have OPN hired with the public safety. By moving public safety to that facility, do we need to go back out for an RFP?
The professional services, we don't have to bid for that.
So,
We have all the programming from PD and from City Hall.
right.
They'd probably create a new contract, scope of services.
Well, I think then we just go with the OP. I mean, we find out on the Main Street thing, but I think you're right, Wade. I hadn't thought through that process and I just got the news this afternoon. I was just kind of thrown out. But I don't think they'll do bid documents and they'll do everything else. And I think we need to do that.
But therein again lies leaving PD on the square permanently.
Not necessarily.
It doesn't mean they can't leave in like 10, 15 years or something like that.
5 years. Yeah.
Right, I mean, you've got to move a domino. If we just set our dominoes up and don't do anything, they just sit there. We've got to move a freaking domino, guys. And if you bring in OPN to repurpose a building that taxpayers have screamed at us for over a decade to do, of repurpose instead of build everything brand freaking new, then bring in OPN, figure out what we need to do there and get 2 dominoes to move so the other dominoes can start falling. Otherwise, we're just gonna sit here in 2 weeks in another 3-hour meeting saying the same crap over and over again. I'm sorry, but I feel like I've already had this meeting.
I mean, I've been doing it for 3 years.
So like, we
Constant
just need
argument for
to
3
do a
years.
domino.
But the point I'm making, and maybe I misunderstood what you were saying, is I thought you were talking moving PD over there permanently with that.
I don't,
That
I
is
mean, I
what
would
I was-
say I'm probably the
that's
same
what I
boat
was-
as you, that I probably don't have interest in that. There's also, as we're talking about moving dominoes, if you got City Hall out of here, while we look at the second and third domino are, if you just had PD and fire share this building for another couple years while you work on the permanent solution, that would give more breathing space. Again, 10 years to do all this. We have time to do all these projects in 10 years if we start doing them.
Yeah.
We have bonding capacity coming, right? We're taking a wonderful opportunity this year to clean our budgets, right? And we're doing projects we're developing projects in this town at a rate that it hasn't seen. Now with TIF and stuff, it's gonna be years before there's direct but there's the ripples that come from that, right? With Lost and all that stuff, that's gonna continue. The more we develop here, the more that raises in the background as well. And so,
Steve, the quicker we make a commitment, if we were to go with the revenue bond, right? The quicker we make a commitment, 'cause you're gonna be a lot smarter than any of us on here. Quicker we make a commitment on that, helps protect us at anything that could happen down the road at the state level, right?
Correct. Especially on municipal bond. I don't think revenue bond counts as a muni bond. I'd have to look that up with Mike Maloney, but the bottom line is you're right. I think we're to a couple things and I will, let me say this first, okay? I think, am I hearing, and I haven't heard from Ron yet, or Melissa, but am I hearing right that we need to start working with an architect to develop the regions building and at least council and admin and police, whether it's temporary or not? Am I hearing that correctly? Melissa and Ron?
Yes, but there is one other component, and that is we need to hear back from the Main Street director.
Right.
She comes back on the 25th. Because what we put there could have an impact on Main Street overall. And she walked it today, and she'll come back with her analysis on the 25th.
Meaning in what? That they're gonna say we can't do it?
She's gonna tell us how it's gonna impact our Main Street
Right.
district.
And again, it doesn't have to be a situation where you think permanently long-term, although I'm kind of thinking leaning council admin there, but the point I want to get, and okay, that's fine, the 25th of February. Okay. But I'm still thinking that we still can talk with OPN and see what kind of a cost system they may look at, what it would cost for something along that line. And I also want to throw something else out here. I don't want to muddy the waters too much, but that's in a TIF district, folks. We should be able to tap into some TIF dollars to be able to fund some of that won't come off of a revenue bond that we could use for something else. And so I think we have to keep that in mind, that that is a TIF district. We are in a TIF district. And so we can tap into that.
Isn't bonding capacity, whether you use revenue or
TIF is not effective.
TIF, I mean, it's, you still only have 27 to 41, right? Regardless of bond or revenue.
No, 27 is a GO.
24
Revenue
or-
bond would be
24.
24 or 30.
But you could do 27 and 24.
In theory.
Yeah. So my point,
That would be an
but
aggressive move.
my point with that is, so let's not stop here for a minute. Let me walk this through here, and I just was drawing some arrows here. You can set this up fairly easily. I wish I had a marker board, but you know, if you take being the old teacher.
I was just gonna say you were a teacher.
Yeah, so again, we move everything temporarily right now, whether it becomes permanent, it's another decision we can make down the road, but council admin PD there. We get the street department building going out west, that's the next phase, okay? And fire can go in this existing facility here, so first phase, regions, council admin, PD, fire here for now, okay? Street department out west, but that building will be used for fire first. Until the time that we get a fire station built either in 2 locations or 1 location, one or the other, that's gonna have to be another decision. Then we move street department. Okay, then I think what we have, and again, the street department building isn't gonna be a huge cost, shouldn't be, okay? Once we get that done, we look at fire and our police department. I know you're saying, well, then police department's gonna get knocked down the road. No, they're not, because you're putting in basically in a brand new rebuilt building there. And then we're gonna move them eventually to something else. And then you've got all kinds of opportunities then to look at other things as well, whether it's the joint fuel facility, other things you gotta attack. But that seems to be a fairly logical step-by-step, moving at least 4 or 5 of the chess pieces, to try to get things done.
Don't know if we're being temporary, if we need to move PD over there.
I was just gonna say that. I
It
think
should
that's.
Just be city hall
We
only,
shouldn't.
minimize the cost, right, you're not trying to make more expensive PD. I don't wanna ever speak for chief,
Yeah.
but you know, in conversations, staff wants us to have a plan and actually do something about it. And if the plan is give everybody here, PD and fire, a little more room while we work on stuff for the next 2 or 3 years, that's a cost savings for the taxpayer and lets us plan for that more permanent home as we continue to move some of these chess pieces. I'm generally on board with
Yeah.
a lot of what you're saying. That would be my only, and Christina.
That's fine. I mean, if you don't want to include the PD over there, that's okay for now. And that may be something we added in the future. I mean, that's just something depending on what our next chess pieces are, right?
It just seems like a lot of throwaway work if their needs are served here.
What do you mean throw away?
Building out the space for them over there.
No, I'm not saying build the office space. We don't have to build out the entire
I
office.
think we're
space.
fine, Melissa, if I hear you right, yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have to build out the entire office space over there, I don't think, do we? Would we have to do that?
Not if
Not if we're
PD is not
not
going.
But we would put a council chambers over there, and that depends on where you put the council chambers.
I think it would be good to look at, if you're going to the exercise, what it would take to wrangle all the departments into one building. Get rid of the satellite offices and put all IT, everybody over in one space in City Hall. There'd be plenty of space over there if you work.
Sure.
There as well.
Yeah.
You can offload other buildings that we're paying for. Actually have staff under one roof. There might even be some governmental efficiency gained from that.
I think if you move if all you move is staff over there, basement's off limits. There's no reason to invest in an elevator for a council chambers in an office.
I'm sure I can give you a delta on that. I mean, I agree at high level, it sounds expensive. I don't know.
I think, well, I don't necessarily disagree with you, Steve, but I think
Cause there's still a lot of room up there.
it depends on where you put the council chambers. You can put it upstairs or downstairs.
You can put
Okay.
Upstairs, I just don't see. the
Well,
point.
let's just say for the sake of discussion that we are putting the PD there. And would the council's chambers go downstairs? And if that is even a possibility, then that's what we need to do.
Well, if you bring PD over there for a temporary position, you know, even five, then it's different because you're utilizing the space outside of the council chambers where, you know, let's be real, you know, we have visitors every now and then.
So what I would propose is, because I think we moved off PD over there, is what if we let the architects that do this for a living tell us how much room we have over there? And then what an elevator would cost or not cost if we had to have one over there, instead of all of us wildly speculating how to space plan to code in a building. That would be my only,
Well,
like, one piece.
Jackie had a cost for the repairs of an elevator.
I don't.
So, I mean, that's a good baseline because you know, you're probably gonna come in a little bit higher.
Well, you gotta build a shaft, and there's other things there too. It's
So-
not a real comparison.
Respectfully, there's, like, we should let the professionals be fully on that. This is a full commercial construction project, not a one that we want to just stab at here and there. We're all agreeing. I'm not saying we have to put an elevator or not. I'm saying let them tell us if we have enough room to not do it, and if we have to go, what that cost delta is with an architect's estimate. Get it all in place.
Go ahead.
I think it's a case where we come up with all of our needs and we let the professionals tell us if we fit or not.
So we need
Council direction.
to start the process for a revenue bond or a GO bond. I think GO, you're gonna have to go to a vote. That's gotta be in November. I think that's too long down the road. I think personally that the revenue bond would be the best option for us, even though it's less money. To your point, we're gonna generate more money in the future. We have the revenue, we're gonna have to, and along with that are gonna have to be some things that deal with, you know, make sure we get the sewer plant paid for and things there. If we're taking revenue from a local option sales tax, which means everybody's paying for it, not just our property tax owners, but everybody. And so we need to start the process of a revenue bond. We need to probably start, Wade made such a great point. I think we just call up OPM and have them to get us a plan or a new contract to figure out what we're doing. And we look strongly at council and admin there now, and then move forward after that once we start putting those pieces together. Can't make a motion because we're in a study session, but I sure.
No, but we can do council direction.
Huh?
So council direction though.
Yeah.
So council direction is
OPM.
to reach out to OPM. Jackie.
What would the revenue bond cover?
That's what I was just sitting here going, what are
I
we
need to
even
know the
bonding
amount,
at this
right.
I
point?
don't think we're there.
Because we've not even got to that point yet. We haven't,
I just can't prepare anything, you know,
Right.
have anybody else prepare anything until we know what exactly. Are we gonna do anything with this building and across the street or just across the street?
Yeah, I think ideally, and not that I want to delay anything any further, but like. Step one, we need to get some timelines on some numbers from over there, because it doesn't make sense to do it for a $1 million project.
no,
Like, if we're gonna do it, okay, so we have some idea of that scope, all right?
Three-department building?
Town street department, right, where we can work through the phase two, we know that building's well within that capacity. And then is there the possibility to start fire at the same time, PD at the same time, or do we need to relook at some different stuff? But ultimately, if we keep having productive discussion like this, we should be able to figure out how to have a bond ready by the summer with actual projects. I agree, revenue bond makes more sense right now. What will we take to everybody in November? You wanna spend your money.
Revenue bond, Jackie, was that April though?
No, it's in your, papers that I gave you, I think, local option sales and service tax revenue bond.
Right.
You just, it takes.
This page right here, the,
Yeah.
right.
it just
Yeah.
has a few Meetings to get through.
it just gives you the count that you gotta get through.
Oh, so that's not the deadline.
No.
you can pretty much do
No,
a
that was
revenue
just a
bond at
sample.
any time.
Okay, okay, okay.
So it's
I
gonna
didn't
take
know if it was-
3 months.
Well, it just coincided with budget so
Yeah, it
well
does.
that. Okay, cause I mean, you know, I think. GeoBond, where you want more leg room, so you can go to the public. And talk about where revenue bond is a little bit, so, you don't have to worry about that vote, so. I think,
Theoretically, you can come back and do a reverse
Right.
referendum, but I think it makes more sense because you're selling it on the fact that you're using local option sales tax, which is already in place. And you're getting it from people that come into the community as well as those that live here, and it's not a property.
And our fire department services all of.
Yes, all those around. Thank you very much for that comment. Yeah.
So therefore,
Yes.
using a revenue bond makes the most sense to me when we're
Yes.
looking at that specific aspect of it, because and we were just discussing this the other night, how
Yes.
the county needs to step up on it, so.
So what I'm looking at here from Jackie's timeline, it's about a 3-month process. Once we make the decision to move forward with one of those.
Great.
In the meantime, that would give OPN, if we can get some numbers together of what we think we might want. And folks, I gotta be honest with you, if rather than doing $2 or $3 million or $2 million or whatever it is gonna take to do that facility over there, if we could throw in a new street department building out at the west side and make that all work, you already got 2 or 3 pieces of that puzzle. That's a decision down the road. I don't wanna make that decision now, but I'm just laying that out there. But you've got your 3-month timeline here, and I think you're looking at some pretty good things that we can do in a very short period of time.
Jackie, do you need any more direction from us at all?
Yeah, I'd like to hear it reiterated. Like, what is the exact ask of OPN?
Go ahead,
Want
Raj.
me to try it?
Go ahead, give it a shot.
We'll try it very concisely.
Okay.
City Hall, I've sat in so many different seats here, I don't know which way I'm pointing anymore. City Hall across the street. That's what we need to know, what that looks like to move all the departmental needs, which they have on file already. Right? First step, high level number, get everyone under one roof,
Including IT, communications. and
Everybody.
facilities.
everybody. Right? And if that means, that pushes us to where we have to get an elevator to put council chambers, give us the delta of what that costs and a high level estimate, so we can decide if that juice is worth said squeeze. Right?
So community development, IT admin.
Everybody that's under the administrative umbrella. Yep.
Sure.
That's step one. We
Not
have,
PD for now.
No.
And
Correct.
not,
nope, we'll leave them here. We have some high level numbers on street building and fire department that we can brush off from them as well. They could bring to the next meeting where they present, which would potentially let us make several decisions all.
we move, that frees up a little bit more space for them.
For the temporary.
Yeah, you probably want them to throw in some numbers for temporary things here too, right?
I think that's an easy one to throw at it for now, but none of that needs to be overly permanent.
No.
Especially if it's potentially coming down.
Yep. That make it clear, Wade?
Yes, sir.
Are we all in agreement?
Hopefully our friends at OPN and Ryan are watching tonight and are listening to all the anyways. I have to know that they are.
If I may, Aaron Young, Communications Manager. Domino's, a lot of things that council's talked about throughout this study session, and you all know, we all know as staff that bringing the community along is gonna be just as important as this, throughout this process. So allow us grace as city staff takes that directive to continue to bring the community along, and likewise too. I mean, you've heard also from concerned community members with, potential rumors or just some iterations or concepts of what could have been part of Vision 2030. And so just from a city staff standpoint, from an elected official standpoint, we'll continue to have that dialogue with our community members, because just as much as this move and this change can be scary, but also embraced by our city staff, is still important to have that dialogue to ensure that they understand kind of what this plan we're going through, because everything that's part of that 40-minute video and the PDF that was once presented by former leadership, I mean, that's drastically changing. So it's really important for me to come up and just address that from both an external standpoint, but then also an internal standpoint. You're talking about PD and fire, and those chiefs aren't here tonight. So it's just important to make sure that we're also doing our part to ensure that both staff and citizens are brought along every step of the way. But it was important to share that.
Perfectly.
Thank you.
Thank you. You got your work cut out for you.
One more thing, since we are still on this whole discussion of 2030. I had asked for that information on all the properties that we own. Okay, and I was going over that and looking at the old wastewater plant. Is that a potential for sale that we could do?
Not anytime soon. We still are hauling the sludge out of there, and that is contracted through fiscal year 26. And so then after that point, it might be, the DNR would have to approve everything, it sounds like, but
Gotcha.
Are the buildings down? No?
For some reason, I thought we were closer to being done over there.
Well, you know, don't wanna throw too many monkeys in the wrenches in the monkey work.
No, I'm thinking money.
Yeah, well, I'm
you
thinking, yeah, I'm thinking also that is that something that
We had a shortfall.
in
on
a
our
revenue
budget.
bond that we could say we're gonna take those, what it would cost to take those buildings down. And does Jared have an estimate of what that is? Would you know? No? Move that along a little quicker. Just a thought.
The annex building over here. Do they have staff in there still? They do. When are they expected to have staff out of there? That's when the library takes place, right? Same with the temple.
sure.
No, the temple's ours. isn't it?
Temple's got a.
No, they've got House of Mercy and Herda in there still.
Yeah, okay.
Could we find out the information on that? For when they are expected to be out, cause I can't remember if it was the same time for the annex or not.
Good question.
Sorry, I'm just,
No, it's.
I'm trying to think of things that we can potentially lobby off to sell. I mean, if we could get rid of that annex building, that would be phenomenal.
Yes, I agree with you.
Because they are getting inquiries. Well, they are getting inquiries for new businesses on the square,
Yeah.
so that would be a good.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I think we're all done, so we'll just adjourn.
That's right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.